Hi, Caleb, and hello, everyone. This is Caleb Parkin, and Caleb is going to be doing a workshop for London Lit Lab, a masterclass workshop, just 2 hours on February the 8th at 2 till 4 GMT time. I'm just going to introduce Caleb, and we're going to talk a little bit about the workshop, and hoping that some of you would like to join. Caleb is a poet. Caleb Parkin was the Bristol City poet. When was it, Caleb? Was it in 2020 that you were
Yeah,
the?
2020 to 22, so interesting times.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah, through the pandemic, basically.
Yeah.
He's had work in The Guardian, The Rialto, The Poetry Review, has been a guest post on Radio 4, BBC Radio 4, and you've also been longlisted for the Laurel Prize for one of your previous collections. You're currently doing a PhD at University of Exeter with Renew Biodiversity and exploring human, non-human communication and creaturely voices in poetry, which I'm sure you're going to talk a little bit more about to us because this is sort of what the workshop is based around. And your latest collection is Mingle, which we will also talk about as well, because that's the ideas have evolved from that.
It's
Um,
also on my jumper, as
is
you may have
that
spotted. That's the cover artwork. Yeah.
that's brilliant. Firstly, do you want to tell us a little bit about your poetry? What makes it distinct, Caleb?
Yeah, I guess I'm especially interested in the meeting of eco poetry, kind of which is poetry drawn from that kind of eco-critical um, history and tradition that's emerged since the sort of 60s, 70s, and then queer theory and experience. So kind of queer eco poetry. And again, it's this kind of combination that's emerged over the last 20, 30 years, I guess, of queer poets kind of reclaiming some sense of nature or ecology and what that means in light of queer experience and the potential queerness of nature as well. So those are the ideas I'm particularly interested in my collections. And I've also written a few pamphlets as well, where I've kind of gone to some different places. But for me, collections are a really interesting place to explore these big ecological ideas from a queer perspective.
So can you kind of define what a queer perspective might be, or from your perspective anyway? I mean, what are you kind of going at it at an angle or looking at different combinations, or is there something specific about that?
Yeah, I was thinking about this with queer eco. There are these traditions again of eco criticism, queer theory, and then these areas that they might meet, kind of thinking critically and creatively. It's also about a reclaiming of what we talk about as nature, as is often coded as quite kind of straight, or like that heterosexuality, cis heteronormativity, I guess,
Mm.
is the norm. And when you look at what's going on in the more than human world, it's all going on actually. And to impose any human kind of identity or way of being onto the more than human, it is an imposition. So it's just as queer as it is anything else, the thing we call nature, which I also don't really think exists. So I want to kind of unsettle some of those ideas that the kind of nature in culture ideas that lots of people hold without realizing. We're seeing it play out right now, actually, on a grand and horrifying scale in the States. You know, some of the underlying normative notions um, of gender, of the family, of white supremacy, actually, and all of those things can be traced back to some kind of early roots of um, how we frame nature, what is natural, what is not natural, what is wild, what is civilized. And so I think kind of queerness has a part to play in unsettling and troubling some of those destructive binaries that still exist.
Yeah, and of course, if you don't, if you have a set idea of how things are, you're less likely to actually see the truth in what's happening. So the nice thing about troubling and unsettling and looking at it from a different perspective is it's opening up possibility, isn't it? Which actually can be incredibly important, like in the way that we live day to day. It's not just through the poetry, it's like poetry becomes informative for the way that we live as well.
Yeah, and I think when you read a poem, or certainly when I read a really interesting, good, good poem, just tilts my understanding of the world just that little bit. And I feel like if my work or if any work I encounter can do that, then we're doing something as part of a kind of broader cultural tipping point around the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. So the workshop that you're doing for us is called Impurities, Poetry and Contamination. And our little subtext on our London Lit Lab, our subtitle on our London Lit Lab website says, "Embrace cross-contamination of poetry through the creaturely impure and otherworldly." Could you just expand on that a little bit and just tell us a bit about what this workshop might entail?
Yeah, it's kind of evolved from Mingle from the new collection, and I got thinking around toxicity partly through reading a Heather Davis paper called Toxic Progeny, the Plastosphere and Other Queer Futures, which I really enjoyed. And Heather Davis sort of talking about living with toxicity, living with some of the forever chemicals that we've put into the environment. This is not saying celebrating them because they're not a good thing by and large, but also, we're not at a point where we have a kind of pure, pristine nature that possibly never existed anyway. So I think a kind of embracing of impurity can be really inspiring, engaging, refreshing. Especially when we think about the more than human world. And one of the images that's kept coming through is that of the pool or pond. We often think of these like pools or ponds as these kind of, especially when you encounter them in a kind of wild space, as these kind of pristine, separate, distinct little ecosystems. And of course, nothing is pristine and distinct, especially when it comes to water, which is all part of this, the biosphere, and water is always moving and mingling and mixing up. So in the workshop, what I wanted to do is for us to create almost like a pool of language together where we're throwing words in and then disrupting each other's writing process and practice. Because I think it can be really fun and just disturbs or unsettles our notions that actually we've got this like very pure and pristine practice of our own, when I'm not sure that's true. So we're going to have some fun with that. And also poems about ponds and pools and are otherworldly. Quite often ponds and pools in poems, I found loads of examples of these where they are strange spaces that can feel a bit like portals, which is something I played with in Mingle as well. So I want to throw all of those things into this session.
So it sounds amazing. So it will be an interactive session where people will be working together in groups or as a group.
We're gonna work with the chat as a kind of pool, treating the kind of chat as a pool, I think. Yeah, so people will be able to throw things in and be able to dip into that, like
Yeah.
pond dipping, to find some new language that you might not have used otherwise.
It sounds brilliant. And is it because on the website it says that it's mostly for people who are already writing poetry, but is it open to people who are new to it and just want to experiment or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that'd be absolutely fine. I think it'll suit whatever stage people are at their writing. I'm very good at flexing to meet people, which I will in
brilliant.
this. Yeah.
Okay, well it sounds really, really interesting. Can you give some examples of poets that you've been inspired by? I mean, just to give a bit of an idea of contemporary poets, past poets, traditional poets, anything really.
Yeah, for sure. I'm reading Mary Oliver's essays at the moment. I really like to reclaim Mary Oliver as a queer eco poet, which she is and was, and yeah, so there's a lovely pond poem of hers we might look at. Jane Hirschfield, who's an American poet who's also a Zen Buddhist. I love her puzzling, riddly, strange work that always leaves me feeling slightly like a sort of reality has been slightly adjusted. Do you know her work?
No, I don't. Sounds amazing.
Oh, she's fantastic. Yeah. Chen Chen, who's an American poet who's really funny and whose work is really sweet but really incisive. So I really love Chen Chen as well as some contemporary poets. Yeah.
Sounds amazing. Okay, well, I guess people will be introduced to these poets as well in the session. So,
Mm.
well, thank you so much, Caleb. I think that's probably given everyone enough information about the course. It's a workshop, 2 hours. It's on 8th of February, 2 till 4 GMT, and you can find out more about it on our website, which is www.londonlitlab.co.uk. We'll put all the notes in at the bottom of this newsletter. And we're really excited to have you join us for a workshop, Caleb. And
Yeah, looking forward to seeing everyone there. I think it'll be really fun.
brilliant. Have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Thank you.
See you soon.